is Diana Lynn, and I am a co-founder and director of the Heartland Song Network, and I'm joined this morning by my friend and our Artist of the Month for March, Mikal Shapiro. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Let's see, where to start? I don't know that I actually know that much about your personal, like educational or musical background. I, of course, have met some of your family members, and I know that your website says that you've grown up kind of wandering around the Sonoran Desert, and you were there recently. What's the 411 on your family's musical journey? How's it made an imprint on you?
Oh, for sure. And I was just visiting with my mom. She's staying in a senior living facility, and she has some pictures on her wall. And one of the pictures of her is of her in her barbershop quartet, Sweet Adelines, and she's pregnant with me. So I think, from the womb, starting with that, my mom was a singer, still is, can still harmonize in ways that blow my mind. And my dad was a drummer and a piano player. So I did grow up with a musical family. They didn't necessarily put that on me. They supplied me with all kinds of paints and colored pencils and crowns and a lot of visual art background. But as far as a musical background, I didn't really delve into it until I was at least 19.
And when you when you
Teens.
dove into it at 19, was that with lessons, or were you gifted an instrument and you just decided to learn?
Well, I was always making up songs as a kid, but then my sister had a guitar that she had found in the trash, and it was sitting around the house, and I loved writing poetry, and I thought I would just like try to make some noise on this thing in the corner that that was literally trash at one point. And but I didn't really take it as seriously until I became friends with Casey Rausch, who had grown up in a family. She's a singer-songwriter from Kansas City, and she grew up in a family that had a picking circle. Music was very much a part of her family experience, and she lent me her sister Kim's guitar, and we started playing together. And that's where I started learning, picking up chords, started writing songs. That was
Did you?
around 18, 19. Yeah.
That's a little late, compared to a lot of the folks that I've talked to, but it's never too late. I live with someone who just took up the guitar at the age of 67, so it's as long as the desire is there, and especially if you have support in your circle of influence, whether it's your family member or your partner, or you're just open to allowing yourself the grace and the time and the space that you need in order to do it. That's so very important. Um, did you have, or do you have now a particular mentor, or are you mentoring anyone now?
Everyone who I've ever played with has had an influence on me as a musician. Um, I I look up to a lot of people in the local scene. There's just so much talent here, and I think probably like lately I find myself really um, drawing on a lot of inspiration from the bands that I'm in, Montet Odds, the Republic Tigers. These are both rock bands, synth rock, post-punk rock bands. Um, but even before that, when I was in a South American folk band called IU, who they're still playing out, they're an amazing band. I learned a lot about music from a different cultural perspective, and that widened my spectrum for sure. Um, a lot of polyrhythms, a lot of Afro-Peruvian, what they call chichas. These are psychedelic cumbias that were influenced by 60s and 70s rock and roll from the States. So these fusions in the way and the way that music is a language that crosses all kinds of cultural, class, racial barriers, is something that I've always been interested in. And just being able to see it from that perspective and to approach it from that perspective has been very rewarding in a lot of ways.
I think that's what makes you the most interesting to me, is that you do not keep yourself in a box, and you are connected with these projects that are so varied and so eclectic, and music that I would have never been exposed to or known about but for your participation in them. So thank you for that. It's been a very it's a good experience for me. I grew up, I'm a boomer, so I grew up in the 60s, the 50s and 60s when rock and roll got started, and there was a lot of R&B and rock and roll in my past, and it's only in my senior adult years that I've been open to experiencing the music of Fado and the Ensemble Iberica, lexicon, and hip hop and rap and all that stuff. It's just amazingly the depth and breadth of talent that we have right here in the Heartland, and I think you're the poster child for what's possible here and what's available here if you just open your heart and your mind to it. Are you writing right now? Are you in a generative phase? What are you writing?
I am. I have been writing throughout the pandemic here and there, but it's definitely been a slow drip. I've eked out some songs just out of necessity, for my own mental and emotional well-being. I'm writing more now intentionally to create an album. I just feel I've just been more inspired lately. I think it's been hard, and it's been hard for all the musicians that I know getting through this time of kind of a lockdown, but just like creatively, some people dove into it and have been super prolific. I'm not one of those people. I feel like I'm just now starting to feel creative sparks again.
And I think that's okay. I talked to Jeff Black about this very thing last week when he was on the air with me on KKFI. He has been one of the most prolific songwriters that I know for the last 30 years. And when the pandemic got its grip on everything, he shut down his generative, chops too, and, became okay with it. When you do it year in and year out for years, this was an opportunity to reset and recalibrate and kind of take your temperature, as to where you really were, and if you wanted to make a shift or a pivot. I hate to overuse that word that became so prevalent during the pandemic, pivot. But if there was a time to do it, this is the time in the universe to do that. Do you devote a particular part of your schedule to writing or creating? Would you fit in Nashville on Music Row in one of those little houses if you had to go to work 9 to 5 to create every day?
That sounds like a dream. Yes, I do. I play every day. I don't necessarily write every day, but I do play and sing every day. And I'm constantly discovering new levels of my skills that it keeps me going, honestly. Like sometimes you hit a plateau, but if you push through it, then you find yourself like jumping up a level in the craft, and that's really exciting.
I think it is exciting, and that's one of the things that I try to encourage. I'm not a musician, I'm not a generative artist, but I try to encourage those in my circle that are. Just please know that whatever it is you're going through, it is just a phase, good, bad, or indifferent, and that if you're in it for the long haul, you'll figure it out, and it's not going to always be the same. And there's opportunities wherever and whenever. You just kind of have to have your antenna up and be open to whatever may be out there. Do you like to collaborate? Tell us about your most recent collaboration, if you have one.
I love collaboration. I think one of the main reasons that I'm so in love with music is because most of the time it is a collaboration. And that's one of the ways that I find myself in social circles. Like that's a way that I relate to other people socially. Um, so yeah, collaboration lately with Monta at Odds, working with Diedrich Moore, and that band has opened up a lot of parts of my brain that I hadn't visited maybe ever, but definitely not since like the 80s and 90s. And whatever those musicians bring to the table pushes and prods my brain in ways that I particularly enjoy. And I can say that about every collaboration that I'm in. Every time I sit down and play with my partner, Chad Brothers, like there's just a fluidity there and yeah, resonance that for one, it helps with our like connection. But also it pushes me musically because he's such a phenomenal musician. He has such a good ear for harmony and melody, especially on guitar.
And
So
and he seems, Chad Brothers we're speaking of, like it would be such a safe harbor to collaborate with him and to be working with him, that he's, a very gentle and kind human, and that would create a safe space to create and collaborate regardless of whether he was, your partner or not. You hit the jackpot there, girl. Many of the artists in the Heartland that I've become familiar with, folks like Bob Walkenhorst, and yourself, you have multiple art forms that you are exploring simultaneously. Music is not just your only thing. Can you talk about some of the other art forms that are part of your toolkit?
sure, yeah, I'm an art school dropout, so I've kind of dabbled in a lot of the visual arts, painting, drawing, ceramics. I've finally got a degree. It was like the 17-year master's program in filmmaking, which I approached in the beginning as something that would combine all of my loves, my creative loves, the visual art, the soundtrack, the score, music, rhythm, writing. I've always been a writer since I was a little kid. I would write stories. So filmmaking has definitely been something that's fused a lot of these what had before been disparate tracks, pulling me in a lot of different directions. It's allowed them to kind of, I've been able to funnel them into something that feels more cohesive, I guess. But they all inform each other. They're, even painting is about rhythm. Even writing is about has a melodic sense to it. So I really find that all these different creative paths reflect and inform each other.
Well, it also probably gives you the opportunity to, if you so chose, to create multiple revenue streams to support yourself. So
Absolutely.
that if one wasn't particularly busy, there was something else, that you could tap into to keep yourself supported. Is there a particular performance or artistic experience that has had the most profound effect on you?
Yes.
And if you
And
don't want to give the details, that's fine, but it's just
no, I'm happy to. I just,
sometimes they're just, I'll talk to folks and they'll say, the most profound effect that I had, I went to a square dance when I was in the 5th grade and, saw all these people dancing and there was a particular call and response and I'd never seen anything like that. And this was coming from someone who was a classically trained um, cellist. So you just never know, I never know what answer I'm going to get to a question like that. And it's like asking somebody, what's the first record you ever bought with your own money, and what's the first concert experience you had? It's just all over the place.
I think it was Air Supply, Book of
Uh,
Love, but it was a cassette. But um, uh, yeah, and this may seem like it's out of left field, but it's really been kind of the roots of a lot of what I've done. Is like as a child, I did a lot of shadow puppetry, and you would think like, how does that apply to what I'm doing now? But I actually still do puppetry. I do still do shadow puppetry, but it's also like my first experience with a screen and creating a story as a performance. And I think that feeds into what I do as a songwriter and as a filmmaker. So yeah, shadow puppetry, I would say. I used to throw together these sort of art parties where I would invite everybody I knew and didn't know, complete strangers, to collaborate on these large scale community creative performances that involved making puppets out of trash and dancing around behind a screen while musicians played.
it sounds like nothing but fun. I mean, it would tap into so many different avenues of your creative experience: the visual, the audio, engaging an audience, storytelling. You know, the whole. You're my first and only person I've ever spoken to that was into shadow puppetry. So I can check that off the list. I know someone that does that. What are you working on right now this week? What's on your to-do list?
I have band rehearsal tonight for Monte at Odds. We got accepted to the Treefort Festival in Boise, Idaho, so we're practicing up for that. And so did the Republic Tigers, and these are the same band essentially with a different front person. I front Monte at Odds, and Ken Jankowski fronts the Republic Tigers. But so we're gearing up for that festival later on in this month, and we have some rehearsals this week. I'm also working on some filmmaking stuff. I'm always I feel like I'm dipping into this new not-for-profit that I began with some friends as an independent entity of the Kansas City Folk Festival. We've just branched off from Folk Alliance International, so working on that. I have a board meeting for that. It's our third board meeting tonight to organize for the folk festival, and that's a big chunk. And also volunteering for KKFI, as you know, as a DJ yourself. There's always opportunities there to create and to organize a community radio station. Like, how fun is that?
It is a big chunk of time. I mean, a lot of folks don't understand how much time really goes into preparing, you know, a weekly 2-hour show of music, especially when you are attempting to give a voice to those that don't have one or that's underserved. And one of the things that I most admire about you is how you also use your art to be active, you know, to be politically and socially active. I've always known that to be the case with you. What are you involved with now? What are the causes that are the most resonating with you the most right now, and how are you incorporating your art or mirroring your art to show support for those causes?
Well, I was recently honored to be able to play for a rally for safe and welcoming in Wyandotte. It was a push that's been going on for about 5 years to create municipal IDs for people, and that extends in a lot of beneficial ways to the citizens of Wyandotte. So that was one thing. This week we have a benefit for the Midwest Innocence Project, which is an organization that helps get reprieve and release people from prison who are innocent, which happens to be in the thousands, and it's just for the Midwest. But we saw them in the getting some national attention for releasing Kevin Strickland, most recently, who is in prison for over 40 years for a wrongful conviction of murder. They do really important work, and oftentimes it's thankless, and legal work is so tedious, and to be able to bring a creative side to it, to be able to celebrate them and bring awareness to them through the arts, through music, is I think Joyful Revolution is effective in a lot of ways. I mean, people still need to write letters and do the tedious work, but combining that with the creative arts is one way to keep people enthused and energetic about causes that are really, really long-sighted.
I think the ability to do that, to marry the activism with the arts, is what will make people want to survive and thrive here and stay here in the Heartland, which is, one of the goals of our organization is to support artists like yourself and your endeavors, so that you don't move to Nashville or New York or LA, and you can go visit and have meetings or whatever, but we want to foster an environment and a support network that will allow you to do this very important work right here in our own neighborhood. And I think you're such a wonderful example of that. Do you have an opinion as to what the music industry should be like, or what's next? The industry seems like, to me, there are no rules. You may think there are, but everybody's kind of out there on their own trying to figure it out, and that the old norms or the old paradigms aren't working anymore. What would you, if you could wave a magic wand, what kind of support would you like to see from the so-called industry here in the Heartland to help you be successful? Is it just connections with other industry people, like publicists, booking agents, venue owners, all of the above? What do you think you need, or what needs to come next in the music industry to help Mikal Shapiro, survive for the next 5 or 10 years in this business?
Well, obviously, the simple answer is well-paying gigs, especially for a performer like myself who thrives and wants to be in front of audiences, live audiences, and to have rooms that are available, listening rooms, especially for my songwriter stuff, and that pay well, and where people really value that experience and show up. And I found that, not necessarily in big box venues, but in house concerts. The grassroots DIY scene has probably been the most lucrative economically in some ways. But as far as like bands, because music has become so accessible through the internet and these platforms that don't pay artists at all. I mean, it's really kind of a joke when we talk about it. I mean, you get the exposure, if you happen to go viral or can build an audience online in ways that's a certain skill set, I think, too. And it works for certain kinds of music, but really getting people in a room together and valuing the experience of live music. I don't know, however we can help with that. It's certainly something that I know people do value.
I think that they do as well. I mean, my participation or my own taste as an audience member or a supporter have definitely changed over the decades as to what or how I want to experience music. When I was younger, yes, it was all about the music festivals and the big rock concerts, and the louder and the bigger the better, the more people. Well, that's not the case in my life anymore. I love a house concert or a small venue or somebody's backyard or empty warehouse building, that's not being, I mean, a lot more underground kind of guerrilla stuff is more my style right now. I want to talk just a little bit about the pandemic itself and moving out of it and moving forward. Did you find that your relationship with time changed over the pandemic? Do you know what I mean? Did you have a more profound sense of what day it was or the passage of time? I mean, I found that my relationship with time itself really changed over the last 2 years.
Yes, definitely. And in some ways, for me, for the better. I just came back from the desert and I woke up to the sunrise and I went to bed at the sunset, after the sunset. And I thought to myself, like, this sense of time seems real to me versus like clock time or dates on a calendar. Like the idea of the moon phases, like I feel like it's more real and more connected to the actual world. And I've been able to like get a little window of that again, and it's brought me back to my senses, and I appreciate that kind of time. And if I can stay, it's hard, but there's a way. Life is complex enough where I can hold that linear time that we have on the clock and on the calendar and still connect with the time of the earth, the
Yeah.
earth's cycles. And yeah.
I think that that is very well put and exactly the way I have been able to experience it now that I am not a slave to punching a clock anymore, a time card and a clock. Time is very, very precious, and the times that we're in right now can seem and are very overwhelming at times. I know that this particular year, 2022, has been very challenging for the world and for a lot of people. I think the most challenging year for me to date, it was probably 2008. With just one thing after the other, and you thought, how am I ever going to get through this? But you can and you do if you choose to, and if you've got a network of support around you that you feel comfortable reaching out to. I'm so glad that you're in our network and that you are our Artist of the Month for March, and just really look forward to whatever is next. What's the best way for folks to stay in touch with you and what you're doing, your projects?
I keep up for the most part on my website, mikalshapiro.com. If you can spell it, you can find it.
It's
And
Mikal, Mikal Shapiro, Shapiro.
that's right. And we're a long I for some reason, when there was some kind of war between the Shapiros and Shapiros. And no, I don't know what happened. But
yeah, just like between the Enuses and the Ennises, I get it. I have to go around and say it's
yep.
a long E. Thank you so much for your time today. I think that this was a great opportunity to get to know you a little bit better and find out where your journey has been and where you're at right now with some projects. And before we go, just one last question for you. What would you like to see, if you could, again, wave a magic wand, what would you like to see the Heartland Song Network be able to provide for you?
Well, first off, thanks so much, Diana, for doing this and for helping organize this new endeavor, the Heartland Song Network. I'm excited to see what the future brings. I think if I could wave a magic wand and have the Heartland Song Network support me as an artist in the ways that I need, I think what I am really excited about is the possibility of a music directory. It's been in the works, and there's been like some initiatives started, but to be able to see that through, I think having a directory where we can like thumb through and see all the amazing talent, artists, musical industry support in one source, I think that would be a great boon to our city.
To that point, we are taking baby steps to make that happen with some software that we're looking at and some volunteers from the board that are looking into and have agreed to kind of take the baby steps to at least get that resource available within our own membership, and start there and see where it goes. So we have heard you, and we've heard others with that request. So we have that on our radar, and stay tuned is all I can tell you.
Awesome.
About that, because I do remember that initiative when it started, and when Casey and you were working, Casey Roush and yourself were working on it and submitting my information for it, and having received several inquiries as a direct result of being in that directory. The challenge with something like that, of course, is always upkeep and follow through, but that's just what that's what's going to take, and so we purport to be a network, and if that's what we can do in some way, we are gonna try that. So thank you for that
Awesome.
Suggestion, and for
Thank you for picking up the torch.
expressing that need, because it is a real need. It's a real need. Well, listen, have a great rest of your day. Please give regards to your mom and your partner, and I look forward to seeing you in person sometime really soon, and look forward to sharing with our followers on social media all things Mikal Shapiro for the rest of the month of March.
Thanks so much for spotlighting me and what you do for local artists in the area. It's awesome.
It's fun. It's when it stops being fun, I'm going to stop doing it, but I don't plan on it stop being fun anytime soon. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot,
let's keep
Mikal.
it fun.
Yeah,
Thank you,
yeah.
Diana.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Bye.